They laughed when she stepped onto the firing line, dismissing her as just another civilian out of place at a military range. But when her jacket slipped, revealing a faded tattoo no ordinary woman could possess, the room fell silent, because the Navy SEAL commander recognized it instantly. Isabella Izzy Grant was used to being underestimated. At 32, she lived a quiet life as a librarian in a small coastal town, her days filled with the scent of old books and the soft chatter of regular patrons. She had never cared for attention, never needed the approval of others, and preferred to remain in the background. To most, she was just a simple woman who liked her solitude, someone ordinary, even forgettable. But on this particular Saturday morning, she found herself standing on the edge of a private firing range owned by a retired Marine colonel. She hadn't touched a firearm in years, but something inside her, perhaps an echo of the life she thought she had buried, had drawn her here. She wore a plain hoodie, jeans, and sneakers, nothing remarkable. Around her, men and women in tactical gear adjusted their rifles, their laughter cutting through the crisp air as they boasted about accuracy, calibers, and combat training. Izzy felt their stares the moment she approached the line. "Lost, sweetheart?" one man called out, a smug grin plastered on his face. He carried himself with the arrogance of someone who believed skill with a gun equated to superiority. His buddies chuckled behind him, their eyes lingering on her like she was a sheep wandering into a wolf pack. She ignored them, signing her name on the roster and selecting an empty lane. The whispers followed her as she set her small duffel bag on the bench. She's probably never fired anything bigger than a .22. Bet she can't even load a mag. Why do they even let civilians in here? Izzy's lips curved into the faintest of smiles as she pulled a pistol from the bag. It wasn't new or flashy, just a well-worn Sig Sauer P226, the metal showing faint scuffs from years of use. She loaded the magazine with quiet efficiency, each click of the round sliding into place silencing her doubts more than theirs. Still, the mockery didn't stop. "Careful, sweetheart, that thing bites." Maybe she thinks this is some self-defense class. "Don't worry, we'll call the medic when she drops it." Izzy didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed fixed on the paper target 30 feet away. She steadied her breathing, lifted the pistol with both hands, and squeezed the trigger. The sound cracked across the range, sharp and precise. When the target reeled back, the single hole was dead center in the bullseye. The laughter faltered. She fired again. And again. Each shot landed with the same surgical accuracy, the tight grouping of holes so precise it looked almost unreal. Conversations quieted as heads turned her way, disbelief replacing mockery. By the time she emptied the magazine, a hush had settled over the firing line. Izzy set the pistol down gently, her face unreadable. She reached up to push back her hoodie sleeve, and that's when it happened. The fabric slid just enough to reveal the edge of a tattoo inked along the inside of her forearm, a trident crossed with a dagger, surrounded by coordinates. Not a design one picked from a shop on a whim, but a mark carved into the skin of only a select few. The room stilled. A tall man at the far end of the range froze mid-step. His presence carried authority beyond the others, broad shoulders, a chiseled face weathered by years of service, and eyes that missed nothing. Commander Ethan Cole, decorated Navy SEAL, the kind of man who had led missions that never made the papers. He stared at Izzy's tattoo as though he had seen a ghost. The others didn't understand. To them, it was just ink. But Ethan knew better. That emblem was reserved for a secret unit buried deep within the SEAL teams, one that even most operatives never crossed paths with. And there was no way an ordinary woman, let alone a quiet librarian, should have it. "Where did you get that tattoo?" Ethan's voice carried across the range, sharp and demanding. All eyes turned toward Izzy. She slowly tugged her sleeve back down, hiding the mark, her expression calm. "Just a souvenir," she said lightly, as if dismissing the weight of the moment. But Ethan wasn't convinced. He stepped closer, his gaze locked on her like a predator sizing up an equal. "That's not a souvenir," he said quietly, his tone dark with recognition. "That's a ghost mark, and no one wears it unless they've bled for it." The air grew thick with curiosity and unease. The others glanced between Izzy and Ethan, sensing the tension but clueless to its meaning. For the first time that day, Izzy's mask slipped. Her eyes, once soft and unassuming, hardened into steel. And in that moment it became clear. She was not just a simple woman. She was someone who had lived in shadows far deeper than any of them could imagine. The range had gone silent, save for the echo of spent shells clinking on the concrete floor. Everyone watched as Commander Ethan Cole closed the distance between himself and Izzy, his boots striking with the controlled rhythm of a man who was never caught off guard. Except, apparently, now. "Answer me," he said, his voice low enough that only those nearest could hear, though the authority in it carried across the firing bays. "Where did you get that tattoo?" Izzy tilted her head, meeting his stare with unnerving composure. "Does it matter?" she asked. Ethan narrowed his eyes. He had spent his life reading people, terrorists, allies, spies, brothers in arms. He knew when someone was bluffing, when someone was hiding fear, and when someone had nothing to lose. The woman standing before him radiated none of the fear he had expected. She wasn't bluffing, she wasn't posturing, she was steady, calm, and terrifyingly sure of herself. One of the younger men broke the silence, chuckling awkwardly. "Come on, Commander, it's just a tattoo. Probably something she found online." Ethan snapped his head toward him, and the words died instantly. "That mark doesn't exist online," he growled. Then, turning back to Izzy, he demanded, "Who are you?" Izzy picked up her cig again and slid in a fresh magazine with practiced ease. "Nobody," she murmured. Then, almost playfully, she raised the pistol and emptied the entire clip into the target. Every bullet struck the exact same ragged hole dead center. Nobody breathed. When the pistol clicked empty, she set it back down and looked Ethan in the eye. Satisfied? But Ethan wasn't. The sight of that tattoo gnawed at him like a memory. He couldn't bury. He had seen it once before, years ago, on the arm of a man who saved his life. During a mission gone horribly wrong in Afghanistan, the unit was rumored to be unofficial, almost mythological, operatives trained beyond SEAL Team 6, ghosts who lived and died without acknowledgement. The mark was said to be their silent oath, and now it was inked on a librarian. He stepped even closer, his presence a wall of quiet force. "That mark belongs to a unit the Pentagon denies exists. If you wear it, then you are not nobody. So tell me, what the hell is a ghost doing here?" Izzy's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Retired," she said. The word hit Ethan harder than a gunshot. Retired. That meant she had not only been part of the unit, she had survived it, and that in itself was a miracle. The others on the range exchanged confused glances, some whispering under their breath. To them, this was like watching two actors perform, a scene in a language they couldn't understand. Finally, one of the cockier men tried to cut through the tension. Wait, are you seriously saying the librarian is some kind of special ops soldier?" He snorted. "Next, you'll tell us she led missions against terrorists." Izzy ignored him, but Ethan didn't. His stare was as sharp as a blade. "If you only knew what she's done," he said coldly, "you'd shut your mouth." The man blinked, caught off guard. "You're not serious." "Dead serious." Ethan's tone brooked no argument. "She's done things you couldn't stomach in your worst nightmares." For a long moment, the group stood suspended between disbelief and awe. The librarian, with quiet eyes and a simple hoodie, suddenly seemed cloaked in shadows, far older and darker than anyone could fathom. Izzy picked up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. "This was fun," she said softly, as if she hadn't just rattled a SEAL commander to his core. "Thanks for the warm welcome." She turned to leave. But Ethan wasn't ready to let her go. He stepped into her path. "Wait." Izzy's gaze met his, calm, unflinching. "You don't just walk away," Ethan said. "Not after showing that mark. Watch me." Her voice was quiet, but the steel in it was unyielding. She sidestepped him, moving toward the exit with unhurried grace. Something about her composure infuriated him, not because she defied him, but because it stirred an unsettling recognition inside him. He had lived his life in control, commanding men in the most chaotic of circumstances. But here he stood, rattled by a woman who hadn't even raised her voice. Ethan followed her out of the range. Outside, the air was sharp with the tang of gunpowder and salt carried in from the nearby sea. Izzy walked toward the gravel lot where her aging sedan sat waiting, its paint faded, its frame ordinary. Everything about her screamed normalcy, except for the weight of secrets she clearly carried. "Why are you here?" Ethan's voice came again, this time quieter, more measured. Izzy opened her car door, pausing just long enough to glance at him. "Because sometimes I miss the sound of a gun," she admitted softly. "That's all." "That's not all," Ethan pressed. Her jaw tightened. For the first time, a flicker of something, pain, regret, passed across her face. "You don't know me, Commander, and you don't want to." With that, she slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove off, leaving Ethan standing alone in the gravel, his gut churning with questions. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat in his study, the faint glow of a lamp casting long shadows across the walls lined with medals, photographs, and mementos from decades of service. Yet none of those memories held his attention. Instead, he found himself replaying the range in his mind, her unshakable calm, her impossible precision, that tattoo. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring at the amber liquid as if it held answers. Who was Isabella Grant? How had she ended up in his town, living a life so ordinary it bordered on invisible? And why did it feel like her sudden appearance wasn't an accident? The next morning, Ethan made some calls, discreet ones. He still had contacts in places most people didn't know existed. But the results shocked him. There was nothing. No records of Izzy Grant prior to 5 years ago. No military file, no government trail, not even a paper footprint beyond tax filings, library employment records, and a driver's license. It was as if she had simply appeared out of thin air, which to Ethan only confirmed what he already suspected. She wasn't just retired, she was erased. Meanwhile, Izzy sat alone in her small apartment above the library, staring at a framed photograph she kept tucked away in a drawer. It showed 5 people in desert fatigues, their faces sunburned but grinning, arms slung over each other's shoulders. She traced her finger over one man's face, her throat tightening. "You'd laugh if you saw me now, Caleb," she whispered. "A librarian. Can you imagine?" Her smile faltered. Caleb was gone. They all were. She was the only one left. And no matter how many books she shelved or how quietly she lived, she could never escape the weight of that truth. The quiet life she built was supposed to protect her, from memories, from questions, from enemies who might still be out there. But now, with Ethan recognizing her, the fragile wall she'd constructed was already beginning to crack. And in her gut, Izzy knew. Cracks had a way of breaking wide open. 3 days passed, but the image of Isabella Grant refused to leave Commander Ethan Cole's mind. He went about his routine, morning runs on the beach, training his team at the range, handling meetings with veterans organizations, but beneath it all, her presence lingered like a shadow. He found himself pulling into the library parking lot under the pretense of donating books, though what he really wanted was a glimpse of her in her so-called natural habitat. Inside, the library was a peaceful haven. The faint rustle of pages turning, the scent of paper and ink, the soft light streaming through tall windows, it was a stark contrast to the roar of gunfire and the weight of combat. And there she was. Izzy sat behind the counter, her hair tied back, glasses perched low on her nose as she scanned books. To anyone else, she was just another librarian cataloging returns. To Ethan, she was a paradox, a ghost of a secret world hiding in plain sight. When her eyes lifted and found his, there was no surprise. She didn't even flinch. "Commander," she greeted calmly, as though she had expected him. "Ethan," he corrected. Her lips curved slightly. "You don't strike me as the first-name basis type." "Depends who I'm talking to." He leaned against the counter, lowering his voice. "You didn't answer my question the other day." "I answered enough." "No, you dodged." Their eyes locked in a silent standoff. Finally, Izzy sighed, setting aside the book in her hands. "What do you want from me?" "The truth," Ethan said simply. "You show up at my range with a mark nobody should have, shoot like a ghost, and then pretend you're nobody. That doesn't fly with me." Izzy leaned back, her expression unreadable. "Maybe it should. Maybe you should let me be nobody." But Ethan wasn't wired to let go of puzzles, especially not ones tied to men he once owed his life to. Before he could press further, the door chimed and a group of teenagers came in, laughing as they made their way to the comic section. Izzy stood, her professional mask sliding back into place. "If you're here to check out books, Commander, I suggest you do it quickly. Otherwise, please let me work. Ethan studied her a moment longer, then turned and left. But his gut told him this wasn't over. That evening, as Izzy closed up the library, she felt it, the prickling at the back of her neck, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. She scanned the parking lot. Empty. Her sedan sat alone under the flickering streetlight. Still, she knew better than to trust appearances. Sliding her hand into her bag, she brushed her fingers against the small, concealed pistol she always carried. Old habits never truly died. Her steps slowed as she approached the car. She glanced at the windows, the undercarriage, the reflection in the glass. Nothing out of place. Yet when she unlocked the door, she spotted it, a folded slip of paper tucked beneath the windshield wiper. She plucked it free and unfolded it. 4 words stared back at her in blocky, deliberate print. "We know where you are." Her blood ran cold. Ethan's phone buzzed that same night. It was an encrypted call from a contact in naval intelligence. "Cole," the voice said. "You asked about that tattoo? I did some digging where I shouldn't have. You didn't hear this from me, but there was a unit. Off the books, ultra-classified. Officially dissolved 8 years ago after a mission went sideways. Almost everyone died. The few survivors were scrubbed, erased. Total ghost protocol." "And their mark?" Ethan asked, his grip tightening on the phone. "A trident with a dagger and coordinates. If she has it, Cole, she's one of them. And if she's surfaced now, it's for a reason." The line went dead. Ethan sat in silence, the weight of the revelation pressing against him. If Izzy was truly one of them, then she wasn't just a mystery. She was a storm waiting to break. The next morning, Izzy arrived at the library as usual. Her smile was practiced, her posture calm, but inside, her nerves buzzed like live wires. The note had confirmed what she had feared for years. Her past wasn't buried deep enough. Someone had found her. She tried to shake it off, losing herself in shelving books, helping children with school projects, guiding an elderly woman through the maze of computers. But the moment she had a second to herself, her mind snapped back to the truth. If they knew where she was, then it was only a matter of time before they came. By late afternoon, Ethan walked back into the library carrying a stack of old hardcovers. He froze the moment he saw her face. She was pale, tense, her eyes flicking toward the windows as though checking for threats. "What happened?" he demanded, lowering his voice. Izzy's gaze snapped to him, her librarian mask cracking for the briefest moment. "Nothing. Bullshit. You look like you've seen a ghost." "I am a ghost," she whispered. Then, realizing she had said too much, she quickly turned away. Ethan caught her arm, firm but not rough. "Izzy, what's going on?" She shook her head. "You don't want to be involved." "Too late," he said. Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but then she pulled her arm free. "You need to stay away from me, Commander. For your sake." And with that, she walked into the back office, leaving Ethan standing there, his instincts screaming that something far bigger than him was about to crash into their quiet town. That night, Izzy packed a bag. Essentials only: cash, burner phone, 2 pistols, spare magazines, a knife. Her hands moved automatically, as though she had never left the field. She didn't want to run. God, she was tired of running. But the note had made her decision for her. If they had found her, she couldn't risk staying. Yet as she zipped the bag shut, a memory flashed before her eyes. Caleb's voice, laughing in the desert. "You're the glue, Izzy. When the rest of us fall apart, you hold it together." Her throat tightened. She wasn't sure she could hold it together anymore, not alone. Across town, Ethan lay awake again, staring at the ceiling. His instincts gnawed at him until he couldn't ignore them. He got up, grabbed his keys, and drove. When he pulled up outside Izzy's apartment, the building was dark. But as he approached her door, he saw it hanging slightly ajar. His pulse kicked. He drew the concealed pistol from his waistband and pushed the door open silently. Inside, the apartment was ransacked. Bookshelves overturned, drawers pulled out, furniture upended. Whoever had been here had searched with precision. But there was no sign of Izzy. On the floor, illuminated by the faint glow of the street lamp, lay her framed photograph, the one of her team. Ethan crouched and picked it up carefully. His eyes landed on the coordinates inked on her tattoo, suddenly realizing what they meant. They weren't just decoration. They were the location of that last mission. And maybe the location of the danger now coming for her. Izzy, meanwhile, stood on the cliffs overlooking the sea just outside of town, her bag slung over her shoulder. She had planned to disappear that night, but as she gazed at the dark horizon, a battle raged inside her. She was tired of being hunted, tired of erasing herself. And when she closed her eyes, she saw Caleb again, grinning, fearless, unbroken. "We don't run, Izzy. Not us." She clenched her fists. Maybe it was time to stop running. Maybe it was time to be who she truly was again. The wind whipped off the ocean as Izzy stood on the cliff, her thoughts warring with the crash of the waves. She had lived in silence, tried to bury the person she once was, but the note under her windshield had shattered that illusion. They had found her. And if they had found her, Ethan was already in danger. Her phone buzzed, not her personal one, her burner. She froze, staring at the number flashing across the screen. It wasn't one she recognized, but deep down, she knew who it was. She answered, "Grant." A voice she hadn't heard in nearly a decade slithered through the line, low, smug, dangerous. "Well, well, the ghost answers." Her stomach twisted. "Victor. Thought you were clever, disappearing into the dust. Thought you could bury what you did to my men." His chuckle was ice. "But we never forget, Isabella. Never." Her hand tightened around the phone. "That mission was your doing. You sold us out. You killed them. And yet," Victor replied smoothly, "you survived. Always did have 9 lives. Tell me, does your new boyfriend know who you really are?" Her pulse spiked. "Stay away from him." "Oh, I think I'll be seeing him soon. He looks like fun, strong jaw, SEAL commander, isn't he?" His laugh was cruel. "Perfect leverage." The line went dead. Izzy's heart thundered. Viktor Volkov, ex-Spetsnaz turned mercenary warlord. The man who had ambushed her unit on that fateful mission, leaving Caleb and the others dead in the sand. She had believed he'd been killed in the aftermath, but clearly she was wrong. And now he was here. Across town, Ethan moved cautiously through Izzy's ransacked apartment, still clutching the photo of her team. He had just slipped the frame into his jacket when he heard it, the faint creak of a floorboard behind him. He spun, weapon raised. Too late. A figure emerged from the shadows, masked and armed. The strike came fast, the butt of a rifle slamming into his temple. Ethan staggered, tried to retaliate, but a second figure swept his legs out. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was a patch on the attacker's vest, a wolf's head, blood-red eyes glaring. Victor's insignia. Ethan awoke to the sharp sting of salt air and the rasp of ropes digging into his wrists. He blinked, vision swimming, until shapes began to form. He was tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse by the docks, dimly lit by a single hanging bulb. Across from him, leaning casually against a crate, stood a tall, broad-shouldered man with a scar carved down the side of his face. His eyes glittered with cruel amusement. "Commander Cole," the man said in a thick Russian accent. "So good to meet you. I am Victor." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You're the one after her." "Her?" Victor sneered, pacing closer. "You mean Isabella Grant? Or should I call her by the name she once used? Phantom." Ethan's heart jolted. Phantom. He'd heard whispers of that code name before, spoken in hushed tones among special forces. A shadow within shadows. Ruthless. Unstoppable. A myth. "She's no librarian," Victor continued, grinning like a wolf. "She's the one who killed my men, the one who cost me everything, and now she will watch me take from her in return." Izzy tracked them with deadly precision. She had followed the trail of a stolen van from her apartment to the docks, every sense sharpened, every instinct awakened. She had tried so hard to bury the phantom, but Victor's return had torn away her disguise. And when Ethan didn't answer her calls, she knew. They had him. She crept along the edge of the warehouse, pistol drawn, her movements silent as the tide. She paused by a broken window, peering inside. Ethan was tied to a chair, blood trickling from his temple. Victor stood over him, speaking, taunting. Izzy's chest tightened. She had wanted to protect him by staying away, but now he was in this because of her. and she was going to end it. Inside, Victor pulled a knife from his belt, letting the blade catch the dim light. "I wonder," he said to Ethan, "does she care for you? Has she told you who she really is? Or will she let you die ignorant?" The knife's edge grazed Ethan's jaw. He didn't flinch. "You think you're the first psycho with a blade I've met?" Victor smirked. "You're brave, I like that. She always did surround herself with brave men, and look where it got them." A sound cut through the warehouse, the metallic click of a gun being cocked. "Step away from him." Victor turned slowly. Izzy stood in the doorway, pistol leveled, eyes like steel. "Well, well," Victor drawled. "The ghost herself." Izzy moved forward, every step deliberate. "Let him go. This is between you and me." "Ah, yes. Always the martyr." Victor's grin widened. "But you see, Phantom, I prefer an audience, especially when it's someone she might actually care about." "Victor." Her voice was steady, though her heart pounded. "Last chance." He laughed, spreading his arms. "Or what, you'll kill me? Again?" Izzy fired. The bullet clipped his shoulder, sending him staggering back with a roar. His men erupted, weapons raised. Chaos exploded. Izzy dropped to cover, firing with surgical precision. 2 mercenaries went down before they could blink. She rolled, grabbed a fallen rifle, and unleashed a burst that sent crates splintering. Ethan, still tied, shouted, "Behind you!" She spun, knife flashing as a man lunged. The blade caught him across the throat, sending him crumpling. Another swung the butt of a rifle. Izzy ducked, slammed her elbow into his ribs, and shot him point blank. For the first time in years, the Phantom was fully alive. Ethan fought against his restraints, adrenaline surging. He had never seen anything like this. Izzy moved with terrifying grace, every motion efficient, every strike lethal. She was a storm contained in flesh, but Victor was no fool. He seized a rifle and fired, bullets ripping through the warehouse. Izzy dove, sliding across the floor, returning fire. The shot grazed his leg, but Victor kept coming, rage in his eyes. "You think you can kill me again?" he roared. Izzy snarled, charging. She slammed into him, both crashing into crates. The rifle skittered away. They grappled hand to hand, Victor's brute strength clashing with her precision. His fists hammered down. She deflected, countered, her knife flashing. He caught her wrist, twisting hard. Pain shot up her arm, but she didn't falter. With her free hand, she drove her elbow into his scarred face. He howled, releasing her. She seized the moment, driving her knife into his shoulder. He bellowed, shoving her back. They circled, predators locked in a final dance. "Still fighting, Phantom," he spat, blood on his lips. "Still refusing to die?" "Not until you do," she hissed. Meanwhile, Ethan rocked his chair violently, finally tipping it over. He twisted, straining against the ropes, teeth gritted. At last, the cord snapped. He ripped free, grabbed a fallen pistol, and took aim just as Victor lunged at Izzy again. Bang! The bullet tore through Victor's thigh, dropping him to one knee. Izzy wasted no time. She drove her blade deep into his chest, twisting until his breath rattled. Victor's eyes widened in disbelief. His lips curled into a bloody grin. Still, a ghost. Then he collapsed, lifeless. The warehouse fell silent. Izzy stood over Victor's body, chest heaving, knife dripping crimson. For a long moment, the weight of it all pressed down on her. The years of running, the ghosts of her team, the shadow she had tried to bury. Ethan approached slowly, weapon lowered. "Izzy?" She turned, her eyes wet but unbroken. "This is who I am, Ethan. Not a librarian, not nobody. I was Phantom, and I survived when they didn't." He looked at her, not with fear, but with something else. Respect, awe, understanding. "You're more than what you were," he said quietly. "You're still here. That means something." Her throat tightened. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to." He stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, steadying. "Now I do, and I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in years, Izzy let herself breathe. In the weeks that followed, the town knew nothing of what had happened by the docks. The warehouse was cleaned, the bodies vanished, the story buried. Izzy returned to her post at the library, shelving books with her usual quiet grace. To most, she was still the simple librarian, nothing more. But Ethan knew better. Sometimes he'd stop by, and their eyes would meet across the counter. And in those glances was an unspoken truth. She was no longer just a ghost, and he was no longer just a commander. Together, they were something new, something stronger. Izzy still bore the tattoo on her arm, still carried the memories of Caleb and the others. But now she carried something else too, the knowledge that she didn't have to fight her battles alone anymore. The Phantom had returned to the world, but this time she wasn't running. And that was the story of a simple woman was mocked at the range, until the SEAL commander froze at her tattoo. Sometimes the people we dismiss as ordinary carry the heaviest secrets and the strongest pasts. Izzy wasn't just a simple librarian, she was a ghost who had survived the impossible. Thank you for watching this story on Hidden Compass Stories. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful tales of resilience, justice, and the unexpected twists of fate.